Hey, what's up everyone? I hope you all are doing well. This is Jack from byprogrammers.com and welcome back to a brand new episode of Let's Code React Native. Now, we have been receiving a lot of messages from you guys asking for new episodes. Look, I'm really sorry for the huge delay, and the reason being is because we were too busy and occupied with our work in the rural areas for the past couple of months. And on top of that, I was busy preparing for my wedding as well. For that reason, we had no choice but to delay our project a little bit. Anyway, the good news is that I finally settled down with my wife, and now I'll be able to slowly shift my focus back in creating more quality contents. Once again, thank you so much for your kind understanding. Alright, so in the previous episode, we have built the walkthrough screens together, and from there, we have learned about the infinite auto scrolling, as well as image transition animation. Now in this episode, we are going to look at how we can build the authentication screens over here, or more specifically the sign in and sign up screens. Judging from the UI itself, the off screens might appear to be easy and boring, but things will get a lot more interesting once we incorporate animations later on. Alright, now with that being said, let's get started. Okay, so first thing first, be sure to head over to our start template. The link is in the description below. And make sure you copy the latest updated assets and constants folder and replace it with your existing code base if you are coming from part 1. Or else you can simply download the start template so that it will be a lot easier for you to follow along. Alright, so once you've done that, the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to open up the screens folder and I'm going to create a new folder called Authentication. And over here, I'm going to create a new screen called offMain.js. Alright, so as usual, we are going to import from React. We are going to import from React Native. And over here, we need view, text, image, model, flatless, touchable opacity, touchable without feedback, and style sheet. Next, I'm going to import from components. Okay. So over here, I'm going to first import the text button. And after this, we can then import from constants. Alright, so for this, we need icons, images, colors, fonts, and sizes. Alright, and lastly, we can then proceed to create the functional components. So constant of main followed by the arrow function, and we are going to return a container view for now, and over here I'm going to simply render some random text like that. Alright, and don't forget we need to export default of main. Alright, save it. Next, we need to open up the index.js file, and over here we need to import from authentication, and we are going to import the offman screen, right, like that. And don't forget we need to export it over here. Alright, save it. And lastly, we need to do a bit of configuration in the app.js file before we can navigate into the offman screen. Alright, so over here I'm going to simply import offman from screens, right, and over here I'm going to simply copy and paste it like this and change it to offmain. Alright, save it. And now I would like to make some changes to the onPress event of the login button over here, so that whenever the user click on the login button, the app will be redirected to the offmain screen. Alright, so for that, I'm going to open up the walkthrough.js file. I'm going to look for login, and over here I'm going to supply the onPress prop, followed by the arrow function. Let me see if I have injected navigation over here. Alright, so over here we need to include the navigation prop. Okay, go back to the login. Alright, now over here I'm going to make use of the navigation prop .reset. The reason why we are using reset is so that the user will not be able to navigate back to the walkthrough screen. Right, so navigation.reset. Index will be 0. Route will be name of main. Like that. Alright, save it. Now, whenever I click on the login button, I should be able to navigate to the off main screen. Just like that. Okay, next I'm going to navigate back to the off main screen. And over here, I'm going to give the container view a bit of styling. So style equals to flex will be 1. Padding horizontal is going to be sizes.padding. And the background color, it's going to be colors.light gray. Alright, and over here, instead of rendering a text component, I'm going to render the logo. Okay, so over here, I'm going to first render a logo. And for that, we need an image component where the source is going to be images.logo and the style will be align self-center. Margin top is going to be sizes.padding multiplied by 2. Width is going to be 50 and the height is going to be 50 as well. Alright, save it. Alright, cool. So after the logo, next we are going to render the off container over here. So go back to your source code. After the image component, we are going to render off container, right? And for this, we are going to render a container view. And within this container view, I'm going to render a function called render of container. And I'm going to create this function over here. Function render of container, like that. And now within this render of container function, I'm going to check if the mode is equals to sign in. Now the mode is actually a state that we are going to create shortly, so don't worry about it. So if the mode equals to sign in, then we are going to return another function called render sign in. Or else, I'm going to return render sign up. Now the reason why we are doing this is so that we can have these two forms over here, the sign in form as well as the sign up form, to be rendered on the same screen, which is the off main screen. Okay, so go back to your source code. Next, I'm going to create the mode state over here. So constant mode set mode equals to react.useState, and the initial value is going to be sign in. Okay. Next, we can then work on the sign in and sign up render function. So over here, I'm going to create a function called render sign in. And I'm going to create another function called render sign up. Okay, so here comes the interesting part. What we are going to implement next is that the off main will first render the sign in screen like this. And whenever we click on the create new account button over here, the height of the off container will be animated accordingly. And at the same time, we are going to render the sign up screen or the sign up form. And in order to achieve that, we are going to make use of a library called React Native Multi. Okay, so head over to the installation page, scroll down over here. I'm going to simply copy this, head back to your source code, open up the terminal, and paste it over here, just like that. Next, if you pay attention to the off container over here, you will notice that there's actually a shadow surrounding the off container. And in order to achieve effects like this, we are going to make use of another library called React Native Shadow 2. So scroll down over here, same thing. I'm going to simply copy this and paste it in our terminal. Alright, next I'm going to close the app like that. And over here in the terminal, I'm going to cd into iOS and run pod install. After that, I'm going to cd back to the root folder and run npx react native run iOS. Alright, let me hide my terminal. And I'm going to navigate back to the off main screen. Alright, now over here, the first thing I'm going to do is to import from multi, like that. And I'm going to import multi-view and also use animation state. This is basically for us to perform the animations later on. Next, I'm going to import from React Native Shadow 2. and I'm going to import shadow, right? This is basically for us to have the shadow effects over here, right? Okay. Once we have done that, next I'm going to set up the animation states. All right. This one's going to be the states. And over here we have the render functions, right? So for the animation states, we are going to declare a constant variable. So constant animation state equals to, over here we are leveraging the multi function. So use animation state. And in the param, we are going to define the states that we have. So we have basically two states. We have sign in state like that, where the height is going to be sizes.height multiplied by 0.55. And after that, we have the sign up state. And for this, the height is going to be sizes.height multiplied by 0.7. Okay. All right. Now that we have the animation states in place, next we are moving on to the render sign in function, which is this part over here, right? So for the render sign in, I'm going to return a multi-view component like that, and I'm going to pass the animation state over. This is for us to, animate the container. All right, so state equals to animation state, and I'm going to give it a bit of styling as well. Margin top is going to be sizes.padding, and the height is going to be sizes.height multiplied by 0.55. Next, within the multi-view component, we need to render another container view. All right, give it a bit of styling. You know what? Since we are going to use the same style over here for the sign up form as well, I'm going to make use of style sheet. All right, so over here, constant styles equals to style sheet dot create like that. And for the container style, I'm going to name it off container. So over here, we have flex equals to 1. Width is going to be sizes.width minus, in bracket, sizes.padding multiplied by 2. This is basically for us to get the width of the container, okay? Padding horizontal is going to be sizes.padding. Padding vertical is going to be sizes.radius. Border radius is going to be sizes.radius. And the background color is going to be colors.light. All right. And now I'll be able to make use of the off container style over here, right? Styles.offContainer. Now let me try to save it. All right, cool. So as you can see here, the sign in container view is in place, right over here. To have the shadow effects, I'm going to wrap the container view within the shadow component, just like that. All right, save it. Oops, I think I will need to reload the app. So I'm going to close the app. Open up the terminal. Over here, npx React Native run iOS. Okay, same thing. I'm going to navigate back to the off main screen. Okay, that's kind of weird. Require native SVG. Okay. I think I know what's going on. The reason why this error is showing is because we did not install the React Native SVG library, which happened to be one of the dependency libraries of our React Native Shadow 2 library, right? So in order to get rid of this error, I'm going to install the React Native SVG library. So npm install React Native SVG. All right, now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to reload the app. Okay, I'm going to cd into iOS, same thing, and run pod install. Now I'm going to cd back to the root folder and run npx React Native run iOS. Alright, now let me navigate back to the off main screen. Okay, cool, so we have the shadow effects in place. Next, I would like to test and see if our animation states is working properly. So in order to do that, I'm going to simply render the same thing for our sign up screen over here. So in order to do that, I'm going to simply render sort of like the same thing for the render sign up function over here. All right, so we need to return like that. And I'm going to remove the height property because it will be controlled by the animation state over here. Alright, so once we have done that, next I'm going to create sort of like a temporary button over here that allows us to toggle the animation. Okay, so let me first hide the terminal, like that, scroll down over here. I am going to render a temporary text button component where the label is going to be toggle, just like that. So whenever I click on this button over here, I'm going to check if the animation state.current is equals to sign in, which means if it's currently showing the sign in screen or the sign in form, then I'm going to get access to the animation state and transition it to sign up. And at the same time, I'm going to set the mode to sign up, or else I am going to simply set the animation state, transition it to sign in. And I'm going to do the same for the mode state as well, just like that. Alright, save it. Now whenever I click on this button over here, I should be able to toggle the animations. Now the reason why the animation wasn't being fired the first time I click on the toggle button is because we did not set an initial state for the animation. So in order to do that, I'm going to scroll up over here right before the render method, right? We are going to make use of the use effect hook, just like that. Arrow function. So whenever the screen is loaded, I'm going to set the animation state and transition it to the initial state, which is the sign in state, just like that. Alright, save it. Now whenever you click on the toggle button, it should animate accordingly. Sweet. Alright, now that the animation is in place, next we are going to work on the sign in form itself. Alright, so go back to your source code. Within the render sign in function, over here, we are going to first render the header title. Alright, so we are going to render a text component, give it some styling. Width is going to be 60%. Line height is going to be 45. Color is going to be dark. And the font is going to be H1. And over here, we are going to render sign in to continue, right? Save it. Alright, next, before we can proceed to work on the form, we need to install a very important library, which is the React Native Keyboard Away Scroll View. Okay, so scroll down over here. I'm going to simply copy this and paste it in our terminal, like that. And as usual, we need to restart our app. I'm going to first cd into iOS and run pod install just in case. And then I'm going to navigate back to the root directory and run npx react native run iOS. Alright, I'm going to navigate back to the main screen. So back to our source code, the first thing I'm going to do is to import the library. Alright, so import from React Native Keyboard Aware Scroll View, like that. And over here we are going to import Keyboard Aware Scroll View. Okay, navigate back to the render sign in function. Over here, after the text component, we are going to render the Keyboard Aware Scroll View, right? And of course we need to supply some of the props. So enable on Android should be equals to true. Keyboard dismiss mode is going to be on drag. Keyboard should persist tap equals to handle. Extra scroll height is going to be -300. And for the content container style, flag scroll is going to be 1, and the justify content is going to be center. Alright, so we have the form structure in place. Next, we are going to work on the form input itself. Alright, so we have two form inputs over here. The first one is the email input or the username input. After that, we have the password input over here. So in order for us to achieve that, we are going to first create a new component called form input, right? So over here, same thing. I'm going to import from React. I'm going to import from React Native. And for this component, we need view and also text input. After this, we also need to import from constants, and we need fonts, sizes, and also colors. Next, we can then define the functional component. So constant form input equals to arrow function. Just that for this component, we need quite a bit of props. All right, so we have container style, we have input container style, we have placeholder, we have input style, value, and the default value is going to be an empty string. We have prepend component, we have append component, we have onChange, onPress, editable, secure text entry, keyboard type, and the default value is going to be default, autocomplete type, and the default value is going to be off, auto capitalize, and the default value is going to be none, max length, and lastly we have the placeholder text color, and the default color is going to be colors.gray60. Alright, next followed by the arrow function, and we are going to return something, right? Don't forget we need to export default form input. Alright, so for the form input component, we are going to first render a container view where the style is going to be container style like this. Next, we are going to have another view with a bit of styling. Flex direction is going to be row. Height is going to be 55. Padding horizontal is going to be sizes.radius. Border radius is going to be sizes.radius as well. Align items equals to center. Background color is going to be colors.light-gray. And lastly, we are going to include the input container style as well. Right, so over here we have the prepend component, followed by a text input. And after this, we have another append component, right? So for the text input, we are going to give it a bit of styling. Flex is going to be 1. Padding vertical is going to be 0. The font is going to be body tree. And we are going to include the input style as well. Alright, so for the text input, the value is going to be value. Placeholder is going to be placeholder. Placeholder text color is going to be placeholder text color. Secure text entry is going to be secure text entry. Keyboard type, keyboard type. Autocomplete type equals to autocomplete type. Auto capitalize equals to auto capitalize. Max length equals to max length. onChange text equals to arrow function, like that, and we are going to trigger the onChange prop like that. onPress in equals to onPress, and lastly editable equals to editable. Alright, so that's all for the form input component. A bit of typo over here. Keyboard type. Alright, next we need to head over to the index.js file and include the form input over here. Alright, form input. Don't forget we need to export it like this. Okay, save it. We need to save this as well. Now go back to the off main screen, scroll to the top over here. Apart from the text button, we need to import form input component as well. Alright, now go back to the sign in function over here within the keyboard away scroll view. We are going to render the email input as well as password input, right? So over here we have email and followed by password. So for the email input, we are going to render the form input component where the container style is going to be border radius, sizes.radius. Background color is going to be colors.error. Alright, the placeholder is going to be email. The prepend component is going to be an image component like that. where the source is going to be icons.email, and the style will be width 25, height 25, and margin right is going to be sizes.base. Alright, save it. Okay, cool. So we have the email form input in place. Next, I'm going to create a couple of states for all the form inputs that we are going to create later on. Okay, so scroll to the top over here. We need a state for the email, of course. So email set email equals to react.useState, and the initial value is going to be an empty string. Next, we have name, right? We have phone. And lastly, we need to keep track of the password. Okay. Alright, now go back to the email form input over here. I'm going to supply the value prop, which is equals to email. And for the onChange, we are going to tag the text param followed by the arrow function, and we are going to set the email state to text, just like that. Alright, save it. Next, I'm going to simply copy this and paste it over here for the password text input, because they are more or less the same. Okay, so for this, we need a margin top, which is going to be sizes.radius. The border radius, same thing, is going to be sizes.radius, and the background color, same thing, it's going to be colors.arrow. Next, for the placeholder, it's going to be password. Value is going to be password. And over here, instead of set email, we are going to set the password. So for the prepend component, it's going to be icons.locked. Next, we need to supply the append component as well, so that we can toggle the visibility of the password. Okay, so in order to do that, we need to first create a component called icon button, right? Same thing, I'm going to import from React. I'm going to import from React Native. And for this component, we need touchable opacity. And also we need image. Alright, after this, I'm going to import from constants. And over here, I'm going to import colors. Next, we are going to define the icon button functional component. And over here, we need to add in a couple of props. We need container style. We need icon style, and onPress. After that, followed by the arrow function, and we are going to return a touchable opacity with a bit of styling. Alright, so the align items is going to be center. Justify content is going to be center as well, and we are going to include the container style like this. Alright, onPress is going to be onPress. And within the touchable opacity, we are going to render an image component. Alright, where the source is going to be icon, resize mode is going to be contain, style is going to be width 30, height 30, thin color is going to be white, and we are going to include the icon style like this. Alright, and lastly, don't forget, you need to export default icon button. Okay, save it. Now head over to the index.js file, because we need to export the icon button as well over here. So icon button over here, don't forget we need to export the icon button component, save it. Now head back to the off-man screen, scroll to the top. Over here, we need to import icon button. Alright, now head back to the password input. Over here, for the append component, we are going to render an icon button component, right? So for the icon, we are going to make use of a new state called isVisible. If isVisible equals to true, then we are going to render icons.ioff, or else we are going to render icons.i. Right? Next, for the icon style, the thin color is going to be colors.gray. And whenever I click on the icon button, right, I'm going to set isVisible equals to the opposite of isVisible. Alright, and for the secure text entry, it's going to be not isVisible, like that. Alright, next we need to create the isVisible state over here. So constant is visible, set is visible, equals to react.useState, and the initial value is going to be false. Alright, save it. Okay, cool. Now I can go ahead and type something over here. Alright, and for the password, I can type something as well. And if I were to click on this toggle button over here, I should be able to toggle the visibility of the password, just like that. Perfect. Alright, so we have completed the form inputs for the sign-in screen. Next, we are going to work on the forgot password button over here. Alright, so go back to your source code, navigate back to the right after the form input section over here. We are going to render a container view with a bit of styling, right? The align item should be equals to flex n, and within this container view, we are going to render the text button component. Right, so for this, the label is going to be forgot password. The content container style, margin top is going to be sizes.radius, and the background color is going to be null. I do not want to have any background color for this. Alright, so next, for the label style, color is going to be colors.support tree, and the font will be H4. Alright, now save it. Perfect. And lastly, we are going to work on the login button over here. Okay, so I'm going to render the login button after the keyboard away scroll view over here. Alright, so we are going to render another text button component, right? Where the label is going to be login. The content container style is going to be height 55. Border radius will be sizes.radius. And the background color is going to be primary. Alright, the label style is going to be H3. And whenever I click on this login button, I'm going to simply console login for now. Alright, okay, save it. Alright, perfect. So we have the header title in place, we have the form inputs in place, we have forgot password, and also the login button in place as well. Just that I would like to do a bit of minor tweak on the UI itself. Let me head over to the style sheet over here. I'm gonna change this to sizes.padding as well. Well, you know what? I can remove this and change it to padding and set. It's the same thing. Alright, save it. Yep, a lot better now. Alright, so we have completed the sign-in screen. Next, we are going to move on to the sign-up screen over here. Alright, so for the sign-up screen or create new account screen, basically we have more or less the same thing. We have the header title over here, followed by a couple of form inputs. Then we have a checkbox, and lastly we have the create account button. Alright, so go back to your source code. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to copy what we did for the sign-in screen over here. I'm going to copy this. We need to get the header title as well as the keyboard away scroll view component and paste it over here. Alright, I need to include the closing tag for the view component as well. Now for the text component, I'm going to change this to create new account, and I'm going to remove the color as well as the width property, just like that. Alright, save it. Oops, I accidentally added two duplicated view component, so I'm going to remove one of them. And alright, save it. Okay, cool. Next, I'm going to add a bit of content container style for the keyboard away scroll view. Alright, so flex scroll is going to be 1. Margin top is going to be sizes.padding. And lastly, padding bottom is going to be sizes.padding multiplied by 2. Okay, now that we have the structure in place, next we are going to work on the form inputs over here. So we have name, we have email, we have font number, we have country selection, and lastly we have the password. Okay, so first thing first, we have name over here. Alright, I'm going to render the form input component where the container style is going to be border radius equals to sizes.radius, and background color is going to be colors.arrow. All right, for the placeholder, it's going to be name. Value is going to be name as well. And for the onChange prop, we will be taking the text parameter followed by the arrow function, and I'm going to set the name state with text like that. All right, and lastly, we need the prepend component. And for this, I'm going to return an image component where the source is going to be icons.person, and the style is going to be width 25, height 25, and lastly, the margin right is going to be sizes.base. Okay, save it. Okay, cool. Next, for the email is pretty much the same thing. So I'm going to copy and paste it over here like that. I'm going to change this to email. I'm going to set the margin top to sizes.radius. I'm going to change the placeholder to email. I'm going to change the value to email as well. This one, let me fix the capital letter. All right, and for the prepend component, for the image, it's going to be icons.email like that. All right, save it. Okay, cool. Next, for the font number, same thing. I'm going to copy and duplicate it over here. I'm going to change this to, well, you know what? I'm going to change all of them to font. All right. I'm going to change the value to font like this with a small capital letter P. And I'm going to change this to small capital letter P as well. All right, save it. Perfect. Okay, so after the font text input, next we have the country input over here. And since we have already did it a couple of times in the previous episode, I'm not going to code line by line to implement this component in this episode. Instead, I will include the country drop-down component over here in the star template, and also in the off-man screen, I'm going to add in a couple of states and model for the country input component. Alright, so scroll to the top over here. I've actually added two states. Alright, so we have the countries, we have show country model, and in the use effect hook, I've also added fetch API to get a list of countries from restcountries.com. And once we got the data from the rest countries API, we are going to massage it and set it to our country's state over here. Alright, and after this, I've also added a render function over here, render country model. This is basically a model that will be prompted to the user to select the country. Don't worry, all of these codes are accessible from the star template itself, where you can simply copy and paste it in your own project. Alright, so what we are going to do next is that we are going to navigate back to the render signup function over here after the font input. Alright, I'm going to render the country drop down like that. So for this, the container style is going to be margin top sizes.radius. We need to supply the selected country prop, which is going to be selected country. And lastly, whenever we click on the drop down or the input, right, here we have the arrow function, and we are going to set the show country model flag to the opposite of show country model, just like that. Alright, this one is actually the country. Save it. Now I'm going to toggle to the sign up screen. Oops, I'm sorry, I forgot to create a state for selected country. So scroll back to the top over here. After the font state, I'm going to create another state for selected country. Set selected country equals to react.useState, and the initial value is going to be null. Alright, save it. Now I'm going to navigate back to the off main screen, toggle to the sign up screen. Perfect, we have the country drop down in place, and whenever you click on the country drop down, a model will be prompted to the user to choose a country. Right, so let's say I'm going for Australia. Once I click on it, the selected country will be shown in the drop down itself. Okay, cool. Once again, I'm not going to code this part line by line because we already did it multiple times in the previous episodes. So feel free to get the codes for country drop down from the starter template. Alright, cool. So after the country drop down, next we have the password input. So for the password input, I'm going to simply copy it from the sign in screen, just like that. Since they are more or less the same, I'm going to navigate to the sign up screen over here. After the country drop down, I'm going to render password, right? Alright, save it. Alright, cool. Same thing, I should be able to type the password, and I should be able to toggle the visibility as well. Perfect. Now after the password input, next we have the checkbox over here. Okay, so go back to your source code. In order to achieve that, we are going to create a new component called checkbox. Like that. Same thing, I'm going to import from React. I'm going to import from React Native. For this component, we need view, touchable opacity, text, and also image. Alright, and after this, we need to import from constants. And for this component, we need fonts, sizes, colors, and icons. Alright, and now we can then proceed to create the checkbox functional component. And for this component, we need three props, which are the container style, the isSelected prop, and also the unpressed prop. Alright, followed by the arrow function, and we are going to return a touchable opacity, right? Because this whole thing over here, the checkbox, this whole thing is going to be clickable. Okay, so for the touchable opacity, we are going to give it some styling where the flex direction is going to be row, and we are going to include the container style as well. Alright, next for the unpress, it's going to be unpress. Now within the touchable opacity, the first thing I'm going to do is to render this box over here. Okay, so in order to achieve that, we need a container view, give it some styling, where the width is going to be 25, height is going to be 25, align item is going to be center, justify content is going to be center as well, border radius is going to be sizes.base, border width is going to be 3, for the border color, if it's currently being selected, then it's going to be colors.primary. If it's not, then it's going to be colors.gray. And lastly, for the background color, if it's currently being selected, then it's going to be colors.primary. If it's not, then it's going to be null. Alright, now over here, if it's currently being selected, then we are going to render an image component where the source is going to be icons.checkmark, and the style is going to be width 20, height 20, and the tint color is going to be colors.light. Okay, now that we have the box in place, next we are going to render the text itself. Okay, so over here we are going to render a text component, give it some styling, flex equals to 1, margin left equals to sizes.base. The font is going to be body 5, and we are going to override the line height to 20, and I'm going to include some text over here, just like that. Okay, and don't forget we need to export default checkbox over here. Alright, save it. Now head over to the index.js file. Over here we need to import from checkbox like this, and we need to export it over here. Alright, save it. Now go back to the off main screen, scroll to the top. Over here we need to import another component called checkbox, right? And also we need another state to keep track or not whether the checkbox is currently being selected. Okay, so over here, constant, I'm going to call this terms checked, set terms checked equals to react.useState, and the initial value is going to be false. Alright, now go back to the sign up function over here. After the password input, alright, I'm going to render the terms and conditions, right? And for this, we are going to render a checkbox component. So for the container style, it's going to be margin top equals to sizes.radius. IsSelected is going to be isSelected. I'm sorry, it should be terms checked. My bad. And for the unpress, it's going to be an arrow function. And over here, I'm going to set the terms checked to the opposite of terms checked. Alright, save it. Okay, let me navigate to the sign up screen. Okay, cool. So the checkbox is in place and I should be able to toggle the checkbox like this. Perfect. And lastly, we are going to render the create account text button over here. Okay, so after the keyboard away scroll view component, we are going to render a text button component. All right, where the label is going to be create account. Content container style is going to be height 55, border radius equals to sizes.radius, and background color equals to colors.primary. Alright, and for the label style, font is going to be H3. And lastly, whenever I click on this button over here, I'm going to simply console log create account. Alright, save it. Don't worry about this, it shouldn't happen in actual scenario. Alright, let me toggle back to the create account page. And perfect, the create account text button is in place. Alright, now that we have successfully built the form for sign in and sign up, next we are going to work on the footer section over here. Alright, so if the user is currently in the sign in mode or sign in screen, then the footer section is going to show this. Don't have an account, create new account. And whenever the user click on the create new account text button over here, the animation will be triggered and the footer section will change to this. Alright, let's see how we can do that. So scroll down over here, right before the country model, we are going to render a new function called render of container footer. Right, and we are going to create this function over here. So for this function, we are going to return a container view with a bit of styling. Flex direction is going to be row. Height is going to be 80. Align item equals to flex n. Justify content equals to center. Margin top is going to be -30. Margin horizontal is going to be sizes.radius. Padding bottom is going to be sizes.radius as well. Border bottom left radius is going to be sizes.radius. This is basically for this part over here. Alright, we're gonna do the same for this part. Alright, so border bottom right radius is going to be sizes.radius as well. And lastly, the background color is going to be colors.light 60. Alright, save it. Now let me comment off the toggle button, if not it's very confusing. Alright, I'm gonna comment it off for now. Like that. Oh, and the reason why you see that the off container footer is being rendered on top of the form is actually because of the Z index. So in order to resolve that, I'm gonna navigate to the off container footer function over here. I'm going to set the Z index to 0. And then I'm gonna head over to the style sheet over here. I'm gonna set the Z index to 1, like that. This is so that the off container, which is this part over here, will be rendered on top of the footer section over here instead. Alright, so save it. Oh, and I will need to set the Z index for this container view over here to 1 as well. So style Z index equals to 1. Save it. Perfect. Alright, now go back to the container footer over here. The first thing I'm going to render is a text component. Alright, give it a bit of styling. Color is going to be colors.gray and the font is going to be body 5. Alright, now over here, if the mode equals to sign in, okay, then I'm going to render don't have an account. Or else I'm going to render I already have an account. Okay, save it. Next, I'm going to render a text button component. Okay, this is basically for us to toggle between the sign in and sign up screen. So for the text button component, the label, if the mode equals to sign in, then the label is going to be create new account, or else it's going to be sign in. Okay. Next, for the content container style, margin left is going to be sizes.base and the background color is going to be null. Okay, for the label style, color is going to be colors.support3, and the font is going to be H5. And lastly, for the press prop, I'm going to simply copy it from what we did earlier over here. Alright, I'm going to remove this since we don't need it anymore. And I'm going to paste it over here. So what happened here is that if the current state is sign in, then I'm going to transition it to the sign up animation state. If the current state is sign up, however, then I'm going to transition to the sign in animation state instead. Alright, now save it. Okay, cool. So we have the text in place and we have the text button in place as well. And whenever I click on this text button over here, I should be able to toggle the types of forms. Alright, so now I'm currently in the sign in form. If I click on this, I'll be in the sign up form. Click it, I'll go back to the sign in form. Perfect. Alright, so we have almost completed the off screen, or more specifically the authentication screens. All that's left to do is for us to work on the social login buttons over here for the sign in screen. Alright, so go back to your source code, scroll down after the container footer. I'm going to check if the mode is equals to sign in. Then I'm going to render a new function called render social logins. Right, so for this, it's going to be social logins. And we are going to create this function over here. So function render social logins. Over here, we are going to return a container view with a bit of styling, where the flex equals to 1, align item equals to center, justify content equals to center as well, margin top equals to -30, and for the Z index, it's going to be -1. Alright, now within the container view, we are going to first render the text component, give it some styling. Color is going to be colors.dark, and the font is going to be body tree. Alright, and over here, it's going to be or login with. Okay, save it. Alright, next I'm going to render another container view for the social buttons over here. Alright, so view, give it a bit of styling. Flex direction is going to be row. And margin top is going to be sizes.radius. Alright, now within this container view, we are going to render icon button component. So icon button, like that, where the icon for the first icon button is going to be icons.twitter. For the icon style, it's going to be tint color, colors.dark. And lastly, for the container style, and since we are going to use a similar style for these 3 social buttons, we are going to make use of the style sheet. So over here, styles dot, I'm going to call this social button container. Alright, so I'm going to create this style over here. So for the social button container, the width is going to be 55, the height is going to be 55, align item equals to center, justify content equals to center, border radius equals to sizes.radius, and lastly for the background color is going to be colors.gray20. Okay, now go back to the icon button, save it. Okay, cool. So the Twitter social login button is in place. Next, I'm gonna copy this, paste it over here. I'm gonna change the icon to Google, and for the container style, alright, for the container style, I'm still going to make use of the same social button container style, just that this time I'm going to add in the margin left property to sizes.radius, like that. Alright, save it. Perfect. And lastly, I'm going to copy this and paste it over here. I'm going to change the icon to LinkedIn. And I think pretty much that's about it. Save it. Alright guys, and there you have it. We have finally completed the authentication screens with some pretty cool animations. The full source code for this project is available on shop.byprogrammers.com, and I have included the link in the description below. On a side note, please do let us know which screen would you like to see next. So we have just completed the off screens. Next, you can choose to have the home screen being covered in the next video, or the scan camera and scan QR code screen. This is actually quite interesting. Or we can have the product search screen, or we can have the category screen over here. Alright, you just let us know in the comment section below on which screen would you like to see next. Okay, so thanks for watching, guys. If you like the video, we'll be more than happy if you can give it a thumbs up, comment, share it to your friends, and also don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. I'll see you guys in the next video. Happy coding. Peace.